make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea continues to be hit by the heavy monsoon rain with growing damage. 2 people in the country's southern Chungcheongnam-do province fall into cardiac arrest after being buried in a landslide. South Korea and Poland agreed to join forces on future industries and Ukraine reconstruction projects involving around $52 billion. More than 30 deals are signed at a business forum in Warsaw, with President Yoon and his Polish counterpart at the head table. For 6 months in a row, South Korea's finance ministry expresses concerns about an economic slowdown led by sluggish manufacturing industries. But it says downward pressure has been eased with improvement in exports and demands at home. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with South Korea being on high alert due to the heavy rain causing damage across the nation. With the monsoon front moving southward, the country's Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces are being battered by torrential downpours. Our Shin Se-byuk leads us off.
The powerful monsoon front has caused much damage throughout South Korea. Access to major roads and a number of streams in Seoul have been restricted.
Access to Chamsu Bridge has been restricted since 4:50 a.m. this morning, with the water level surpassing the vehicle control level of 6.2 meters.
Around 4,000 households in Seoul alone were also left without electricity. Landslides and floods were also reported across the country. The heavy downpours have prompted the government to elevate its response levels. Since Thursday night, the warning level issued by the Interior Ministry has been maintained as severe. The Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters also upped its response level to 3, that is the highest that can be issued. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo earlier on Friday instructed the government to make all-out efforts to prevent damage from torrential rain. He also urged relevant agencies, including the police and firefighting authorities, to activate an all-out response system to promptly restore damage caused by the rain. The rain will continue over the weekend. The monsoon front is bringing torrential downpours to Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces, which has triggered heavy rain warnings being issued. For those regions, over 400 millimeters is expected until Sunday. For the surrounding Chungcheongbuk-do, Jeollanam-do, and Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces, up to 300 millimeters is forecast. Those in the central region are to expect 30 to 100 millimeters. Extra caution is needed over the weekend as this bout of rain is expected to be accompanied by strong winds, thunder, and lightning. Citizens are advised to stay out of flood or landslide-prone areas, with landslide alerts being in place. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Korea and Poland's high-tech and infrastructure firms have struck over 30 deals on future cooperation, including on reconstructing Ukraine. The business forum was attended by some 350 firms, with President Yoon and his Polish counterpart Andrzej Duda at the head table. Our presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young reports from the Polish capital.
South Korean firms in nuclear power plants and smart cities have penned agreements on rebuilding Ukraine at a business forum in Poland, as the 3 governments establish a collaborative system to support post-war reconstruction efforts by Kyiv. Attended by President Yoon and his Polish counterpart Andrzej Duda on Friday, some 33 memorandums of understanding were reached between South Korean and Polish firms and institutions, spanning not only future vehicles and batteries, but also construction, IT, aviation and infrastructure, with some ventures focusing specifically on Ukraine.
폴란드는 우크라이나의 가장 가까운 이웃 국가로서 전후 복구 사업에 중요한 역할을 할 것입니다. 한국은 전후 복구 사업 참여에 많은 경험을 가지고 있고 뛰어난 기술력을 바탕으로 신뢰를 쌓아왔습니다. 우크라이나 재건을 위한 협력에 양국이 함께 파트너로 참여하여 우크라이나가 다시 일어설 수 있도록 도와야 합니다.
This comes after Yoon and Duda during the summit agreed to ramp up cooperation on Ukraine's infrastructural development with an MOU between the two governments. Seoul is already looking at some $52 billion worth of potential public and private initiatives. According to President Yoon's senior economic secretary Choi Sang-mok, Ukraine made a request to the South Korean government in May to provide some $20 billion worth of recovery support in over 5,000 projects. Seoul is currently working to provide governmental assistance accordingly through construction pilot projects to restore vital facilities such as schools, housing and hospitals. Chair also estimates around $32 billion of potential private sector deals are in the works, particularly with 6 MOUs signed Friday on building small modular nuclear power plants. Korean firms are also looking to rebuild airports and railroad facilities, along with smart cities in Ukraine, to go beyond simply restoring infrastructure to upgrading them with advanced urban systems.
South Korea hopes to utilize its technology and own developmental experience that achieved the miracle of the Han River for Ukraine's reconstruction. From the second half of this year, we'll start formulating a smart city master plan for Kyiv and Uman.
In order to facilitate such recovery projects, the Economic Secretary said South Korea will offer institutional support, having effectively set up a three-way system with Poland and Ukraine to develop and promote recovery projects through various intergovernmental agreements. Seoul will also open a Warsaw-based office to promote rapid information exchange and cooperation between the public and private sectors and offer customized support for firms. It also looks to provide broader and swifter financial support through official development assistance and loans. While Russia's invasion is still ongoing, the Yoon administration says that Seoul will continue to make meticulous preparations for Ukraine's post-war future, something that President Volodymyr Zelensky has called a common task for the entire democratic world. Arirang, Arirang News, Warsaw.
President Yoon Suk-yeol, on the last day of his state visit to Poland, continues to promote future bilateral cooperation in strategic business areas, focusing on rebuilding Ukraine and the construction and high-tech sectors. After attending a business forum in the morning, Yoon on Friday held a separate meeting with South Korean firms hoping to join projects to rebuild Ukraine. The event was attended by 11 public agencies and private firms, including Samsung C&T, Hyundai ENC, Naver, and Korea Land and Housing Corporation, to discuss entry strategies and means of government support. Yoon also scheduled to hold a luncheon with Korean business leaders in Poland before a discussion with students at Warsaw University, continuing his series of talks with the future generation. As the two strategic partner countries continue their cooperation in key industries, Yoon said he expects bilateral trade volume to exceed $30 billion by 2030, more than trebling the amount reached last year. For the first time this year, South Korea and China held a bilateral meeting at a ministerial level. South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin on Friday evening met China's top diplomat Wang Yi in Indonesia's capital Jakarta on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related ministerial meetings. During the closed-door meeting, the two officials most likely discussed ways to improve relations. They're also expected to have exchanged views on North Korea, which launched a long-range ballistic missile earlier this week. The two officials' last bilateral meeting was about a year ago in August last year. South Korea has imposed fresh sanctions on more North Korean individuals and institutions amid the regime's recent ICBM launch. Pyongyang's provocations have also prompted UN Security Council to convene an emergency meeting, which ended empty-handed. Choi Min-jung reports.
The South Korean government has made clear that North Korea's provocations will inevitably come at a price. In response to Pyongyang's launch of a Hwasong-18 ICBM this week, the Foreign Ministry on Friday slapped sanctions on 4 individuals and 3 institutions involved in the regime's nuclear and missile development. This is the 10th round of sanctions put in place against the North since the beginning of the Yoon administration. The 4 individuals on the blacklist are former and current high-level North Korean officials, including the director of the General Political Bureau of the North Korean Army. They were involved in the development and financing of nuclear and missile programs and engaged in commercial activities that violate UN Security Council sanctions. North Korea's latest missile launch has also prompted the UN Security Council to convene an emergency meeting. However, members of the UNSC failed to hold North Korea accountable for its recent missile launch due to China and Russia's opposition. Speaking at the meeting for the first time in over 5 years, North Korea's envoy to the UN defended the latest ICBM test, saying it had no negative effect on the security of its neighbors.
Our test fire of a new type of ICBM, Hwasong 18, is a warranted exercise of the right to self-defense, to deter dangerous military moves of hostile forces, and safeguard security of our state and peace in the region.
Pyongyang's envoy also slammed South Korea and the U.S., arguing that strengthening deterrence between the two countries is a threatening act and heightens the risk of nuclear war. Meanwhile, the U.S. also demonstrated its ironclad commitment to reinforcing extended deterrence in South Korea by conducting combined air drills with Seoul over the Korean peninsula on Thursday. Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff explained that South Korea and the U.S. enhanced their ability to conduct combined operations by swiftly deploying Washington's extended deterrence asset. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said the ICBM launch is North Korea's rightful exercise of self-defense. This is according to a statement on Friday carried by Pyongyang state media, Korean Central News Agency. Kim warned the U.S. of the repercussions of provoking the North and vowed to accelerate building the most overwhelming nuclear deterrence against Washington. She also condemned the UN Security Council for being unjust and unbiased, and rather biased against North Korea. In the latest UNSC meeting, 13 member states, including the U.S., sought to hold North Korea accountable for violating UNSC resolutions that ban Pyongyang from any launches using ballistic technology. The statement came 2 days after the North test-fired its Hwasong 18 solid-fuel ICBM. For 6 months in a row, South Korea's finance ministry expresses concerns about an economic slowdown led by sluggish manufacturing industries. But it says downward pressure has been eased with improvement in exports and demands at home. Our Lee Soo-jin has more on this latest report.
South Korea's economy continues to see a slowdown. The Finance Ministry's Economic Green Book released on Friday assesses that the nation is continuing to experience the slowdown, mainly due to the ongoing slump in the manufacturing sector. This is the 6th consecutive month that the ministry has reported a slowing economy. Production in the manufacturing sector tumbled 7.5% in May from the same month last year. The ministry said this is partly due to China's reopening having only a muted impact on the South Korean economy.
China's manufacturing inventory levels are currently very high, which means that until they get rid of that inventory, the number of orders South Korea gets will be limited.
In this month's report, however, the ministry noted that there was less downward pressure on the economy, especially as exports are showing signs of improvement. Exports fell 6% last month from June 2022, which was the lowest drop recorded so far this year. The ministry forecasts that exports will continue to recover because it expects to see greater demand for chips, one of the nation's key export items, during the second half of the year.
The market is already doing relatively better now because of the chip sector. There's expected to be a turnaround in exports around October.
Domestic demand is also showing signs of a moderate recovery. Retail sales, an indicator of private spending, rose 0.4% in May from the previous month. South Korean consumers also have a more optimistic view of the nation's economy. The Composite Consumer Sentiment Index rose to 100.7 last month. This marks the first time in more than a year that the index is above the 100 mark, which means more consumers are optimistic than pessimistic. There is some good news for inflation as well.
The rise in consumer prices fell to the 2% range in June for the first time in 21 months.
I think that the economy will see consumer price growth slow starting now or in October.
The ministry added it will accelerate efforts to implement policies that will continue to stabilize and improve economic conditions during the second half of the year. 이수진, Arirang News.
Hyundai Motor's eco-friendly cars are enjoying international popularity, with sales in the UK rising to new heights. According to the firm on Friday, sales rose by more than 13% in the first half of this year compared to the same period last year. More than 46,000 cars have been sold, marking the highest number since 2018. This can be attributed to the popularity of eco-friendly vehicles in the UK, with the government there aiming to end sales of new petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030 and already having introduced a low-emission zone in London. Hyundai's first electric vehicle, the Ioniq 5, was named UK Car of the Year last year, and the Ioniq 6 was awarded Saloon of the Year at GQ Magazine's awards in February. The World Health Organization has classified the artificial sweetener aspartame, widely used in sugar-free products like diet sodas, as a possible cause of cancer. The two WHO agencies on Friday categorized aspartame as possibly carcinogenic to humans, but based on limited evidence available. However, they decided to maintain the acceptable daily intake level at 0 to 40 milligrams per kilogram of a person's body weight. Following this announcement, South Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety said it'll also continue to keep its acceptable daily intake at the current level, but could re-evaluate. This year, a number of films have been performing remarkably well at the Korean box office, like the third installment of the Roundup series and the Pixar animation Elemental. But it's been quite a while since movie theaters were bustling with crowds of people. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin delves into the reason why fewer people are going to theaters and what can be done about it.
Movie theaters have been going through a rough patch for the past few years. First, there was COVID-19. Hopes were high for a comeback after social distancing rules were eased, but it seems that things haven't turned around just yet. The number of people visiting movie theaters in South Korea during the first half of this year only reached half of what it was in 2019 before the pandemic. So what's causing this sluggish rebound?
Streaming services expanded their business significantly throughout the pandemic. As the cinema industry suffered, many film professionals shifted toward these platforms. As a result, we've seen a flood of high-quality original content on streaming services.
Another factor at play is the price of a ticket.
Going to the movies is expensive these days, especially when compared to the lack of diversity in the films being screened.
Movie theater chains in the country raised ticket prices multiple times during the pandemic, citing a loss in operating profits. A ticket now costs 14,000 won on weekdays, that's around $11, and 15,000 on weekends, so around $12. This costs more than most of the priciest monthly subscription options among streaming services available in Korea. However, there's hope for recovery. It's summer season for theaters, which means a flurry of blockbuster Hollywood and domestic films will hit the big screen. The stage is already set, with The Roundup, No Way Out becoming the first film this year to attract over 10 million viewers, while Mission Impossible 7 enjoyed the best opening day among foreign films that premiered in Korea this year.
The news of these films attracting such large audiences could further drive people to the theatre to check them out.
But to really revitalize the movie theater industry, it's time for theaters to undergo a transformation.
If theaters show other content too, like they did with live streaming the Olympics, I definitely come more often. Watching those competitions on the big screen really pulled me into the excitement of the games.
The key is to create an experience that only theaters can offer through top-notch sound systems and special effects. Customers prioritize value for money, so if they're paying extra, they expect something beyond what they can get at home.
By adapting to evolving audience expectations, theaters can reclaim their position as a cultural hub. 송유진, Arirang News.
On Korea's Jeju Island, artworks by artists from Korea and Canada who've kept their disabilities from hindering their senses of expression and creation are on display. It's in line with this year's celebration of the diplomatic friendship between the two countries. Shin Ha-young was there.
Vivid colors covering the whole canvas, and on top of that are some shimmering unknown formulas. This work can be seen at an exhibition called Intense Difference of Its Own at Jeju's International Convention Center. It's part of the mathematical drawing series by Kim Yeon-woo, also known as Pixel Kim, a Korean pixel artist with Down syndrome. He is famous for having a drawing displayed at the Yongsan Presidential Office. For Kim, pixels serve as his own unique units of memories.
대규모로 백의 재료 주제를 가지고 네모난 펜슬로 그리는 퍼포먼스하고 있습니다.
Kim's pixel art beginnings go back to his school days when he would draw lines which he turned into squares. Then he wrote down the names of his friends in the squares and imagined interacting with them. In math class, Kim used to scribble down unrecognizable math formulas and graphs. That early work is reflected in his canvases these days. He draws whenever he gets inspired, as if he's writing a diary. Certain pieces drew inspiration from trips to Canada, where he participated in exhibitions and artist residency programs. Kim has been consistently engaging in exchanges with Canada since 2019. Meanwhile, the exhibition, which focuses on the value of artistic difference in the context of disabilities, does not only display Kim's work, but also features the work of the late Wang Yi, a world-renowned Korean-Canadian sculptor who lived with the effect of polio. Visitors can also enjoy paintings by Canadian artists Brian Ennis and Michelle Benny.
It's important to determine how South Korea and Canada should progress together. We should establish the goals that both are aiming for, as well as the values regarding expression and diversity. The exhibition is a perfect example of that.
Celebrating 60 years of diplomatic ties between South Korea and Canada, the exhibition will run until July 23rd, bringing together artists with disabilities from both countries. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News, Jeju.
The modern pizza, as we know it, has its roots in Naples, Italy. But this year's world champion for the best Naples-style pizza has its roots here in Korea. Our Kim Jong-sil had the pleasure of meeting him.
Meet this year's king of pizza, Chef Yoo Jun-hwan. He has been named as the best Neapolitan pizza maker in the world in the annual Trofeo Caputo World Championship held in Italy. More than 500 pizza makers from 22 countries competed for the highest honor this year, and to everyone's surprise, Chef Yoo claimed the victory. The news made headlines in Italy, with its local media reporting the king of pizza comes from Korea.
But did you know that you would win?
I didn't, because there were more talented chefs that are from Italy, so I just came home before the announcement and later found out that I won.
But how? What was so special about his pizza that moved the judges in Italy?
I felt that the masters in Italy want to inherit its unique culture of making Neapolitan pizza, so I stuck with the traditional method while trying to make it tastier.
Yoo's pizza follows the traditional recipe: a basic dough, tomato sauce, fresh mozzarella cheese, and basil leaves. His restaurant in Goyang, Gyeonggi-do Province was already a local's favorite, but ever since the win, there isn't an empty seat.
We waited for 2 or 2.5 hours to get a table. I would wait 5 to 6 hours because it was the best pizza I've ever tasted.
Pizza just melted in my mouth. The dough tastes so good. The cheese too. It was worth the wait.
Mainly self-taught through cookbooks and YouTube videos, he's been making pizzas for just over a decade.
Out of all the things that you could have pursued, why Neapolitan pizza?
I went on a backpacking trip to Italy when I was young, and when I tasted the pizza, it tasted so good. It was made with simple ingredients, but the taste captured me. That's when I fell in love.
Even after the win, Yu says he has a firm belief that the head chef must always stay in the kitchen.
I'm gonna continue making pizzas as I do every single day. I just hope that my pizza tastes the best in the world. If someone says that to me, I would be so happy.
A pizza master who respects the values of Italian tradition hopes to spread the beauty of Neapolitan pizza to his customers. 김정실, 아리랑 뉴스.
Another rainy weekend is ahead of us as a monsoonal rain front will drop heavy showers across the nation. Severe downpours are expected for Chungcheongnam-do and Jeollabuk-do provinces with up to 400 millimeters in the forecast. The surrounding regions, including parts of Gyeongsangbuk-do province, will see up to 300 millimeters. Depending on the movement of the rain clouds, periods of local downpours will vary. For Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces, downpours of 50 to 100 millimeters per hour are expected. Southern Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Jeollanam-do provinces will see 30 to 80 millimeters per hour. Most regions will see gusty winds tomorrow. For inland regions, winds will be gusting as fast as 15 meters per second. Morning temperatures will be in the similar range tomorrow. Seoul and Daejeon will be starting off at 24 degrees Celsius. Daytime highs in Seoul will get up to 28 degrees, Daejeon 27. Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 30 degrees. Until early next week, monsoonal showers will continue. It's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all for this Friday night newscast. Thank you for watching. Hope everyone has a great weekend and a good night.
I'm live!
저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해주시는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 없지 텐션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고